So there's this young girl, and she grew up very, very poor. You see, her father passed away at the age of 15, and she was raised by a single mother, a mom, a school teacher, on a female school teacher's salary in the 1940s. You can probably do the math on that one. And she once said that one of her most awkward and embarrassing things that she had ever gone through was when she was in high school and they had a dance, much like today's prom. But the family didn't have any money for anything like a new dress. And all that they could find that she hadn't already worn to school thousands of times was an old dress from her grandmother, Mama Lizzie. So she wore that old dress. And when she was there, all she thought about was that she felt like she could hear people laughing at her, laughing at her expense. And she felt shame. Shame at being poor, shame at not having new clothes, shame at how she looked. And there are a lot of different ways that we feel shame. When asked, people gave the definition of shame. The shame is being laid off and having to tell your pregnant wife. Shame is having somebody ask you when you're due, when you're not pregnant. Shame is hiding the fact that you're in recovery. Shame is raging at your kids. Shame is bankruptcy. Shame is my boss calling me out in front of my client. Shame is not making a partner. Shame is my ex-husband leaving me for the next door neighbor. Shame is my wife asking for a divorce and telling me that she wants to have kids, just not with me. Shame is a DWI. Shame is infertility. Shame is telling my fiance that my dad lives in another country when in fact he's in prison. Shame is pornography. Shame is flunking out of school twice. Shame is hearing my parents fight through the walls and wondering if I'm the only one that feels disafraid. But then there's perhaps the darkest type of shame that there is. And it's shame that we sometimes feel for what's actually done to us. When someone's the victim, when they feel shame at how they've been victimized, when in all reality the person who should be feeling shame is the perpetrator. But oftentimes we take that shame onto ourselves. So people like that say that shame is being physically abused. Shame is being sexually abused. Shame is being raped. Shame is being bullied. Last time we started this series, Unashamed. And what we saw was that we learned that everyone has it. Everyone has shame in their life. We also saw that nobody wants to talk about it. And we also learned that the less we talk about it, the more it controls our lives. We learned that there's a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is saying, I did bad. Shame is saying, I am bad. And there's a huge difference between those two. We learned that being unashamed is how God made us to be. And that when sin entered the picture, that's when shame exploded onto the scene. We learned that nakedness is a big ideal in the Bible, and it's in our lives, and it's not being physically naked. It's being relationally naked. Naked in the sense of being authentic, transparent, vulnerable. We are meant to be naked with each other in good and positive sense. In a way that vulnerability and nakedness, that relational transparency, breeds truth and courage. But we have a hard time with that. We make being naked with each other a bad thing, a weak thing. And as a result, we hide from each other and we hide from God. All the while we're keeping shame on others to make ourselves feel better. And we learn that the antidote to shame is coming out into the open with whatever it is that's shaming us. Out in the open with God and out in the open with others. And in that openness, we receive grace and forgiveness, healing and restoration, acceptance and support. The problem, though, so we don't do very well with vulnerability. We don't equate vulnerability with something good, with something helpful, with something healing. To us, we think being vulnerable is the equivalent of being wounded, being something hurtful, something bad, more condemning than building up, more judging than accepting. And we just don't feel that way towards people. Sometimes we don't feel that way towards God, do we? Sometimes we wonder whether God actually accepts us. Is God safe with our shame? And I think that's an important question, because most of us intuitively feel like we wish he was. We hope that he is. But are we sure that he's really safe? Is he really safe with what I'm ashamed of in my life? Today we're going to find that out. You see, the Bible is full of stories about people who come clean about their shame with God. And then it records God's response to them. We're going to look at one of those today. It's from the life of Jesus, who, by his own claim, was God in human form. So what happened with Jesus when somebody came to him and came clean with their shame? We're going to look at it from the book of Mark. And it says, Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her. Heal her so that she can live. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed him, crowding around him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had not gotten better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about this Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Let's stop there for a second. This is a sad story. Here's this woman who's been plagued with an endless menstrual cycle. Not a monthly flow, but a perpetual flow. You see, in the Jewish law, there were these laws dealing with the menstrual cycle. And they had to deal with physical health and hygiene. But unfortunately, they were also used to judge and condemn people. You see, during a woman's monthly period, she was considered ceremonially unclean for 7 days, beginning with that first day of her period. Anywhere she sat, anywhere she laid down, was also considered unclean. So essentially, they were isolated. They were put into isolation so that they wouldn't shut down the lives of other people. If anyone were to touch where she sat or where she lay down, they would also be unclean. And they would have to perform a ritual bathing, and they would remain unclean until evening. In that culture, in that day, every month, a woman having her period was a risk to everyone around her. So she remained in this unclean state for an additional day after her period ended. And she was only deemed clean after presenting 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons to the priest for a ritual sacrifice. she never reached that final day of her period. She never ended the time of being unclean. She never could make it to the priest to make an offering. Day after day, month after month, year after year, an ongoing state of being unclean. Having to live a hidden, shamed life. But there's more. You see, women in first century Palestine lived in homes with small rooms filled with extended family. There was no personal space and very little, if any, privacy. Much of what gave a woman her sense of well-being and her camaraderie was working through several generations of women working together, starting at dawn, preparing the food for the family. As they worked, they talked, they bonded, they shared their lives and feelings and hopes. Not this one. She couldn't be around them, and they couldn't be around her. There's even more. She couldn't have children. Couldn't get married. This was going on for 12 years. Just think about how physically weak she would have been from the daily loss of blood. The smell that would have surrounded her. The constant washing and changing and isolation. There were no tampons, no shower down the hall, no indoor plumbing to flush away the blood, no washing machine or dryer for the soiled linens. Her condition defined every second of every day of her life. No wonder she exhausted everything that she had on any and every medical hope for healing. And now she was penniless and worse than ever. But then she heard about this guy named Jesus. She heard stories about him, stories of power and miracles, signs and wonders, stories of the blind seeing, the lame walking, and even the dead coming back to life. But how could she get to him? She couldn't go out in public. She was unclean. She was in seclusion. If she were to even try to get to Jesus and be exposed, her shame would be even greater than it already was. But she was desperate. In fact, she was beyond desperate. So she came up with a plan. She covered herself to avoid being recognized. She slipped away from her home, made her way through the crowd. Filled with anxiety, I imagine she was thinking, how can I expect this man of God to do anything for me when the whole way here I'm making everyone else unclean? Why am I even bothering? I'm sinning left and right, making this self-serving kind of effort. But she had nothing to lose. So she kept thinking, if only I could touch his robe, just his robe. So she did. She found Jesus. And then with unbelievable faith, she touched his robe. Look at what the Bible says next. Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Can you imagine that moment for her? Instantly liberated from the hell that had become her life. Freed of the shame. Ecstatic. Filled with joy that she had never been able to know before. But then, her worst nightmare happened. You see, the Bible records next that Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. So he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, Look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. She was revealed, caught, exposed. This wasn't going to be a touch and a run. Think about the anxiety there in that moment. When it says that she touched his robe, it literally means that she touched the fringe of his robe. You see, Jewish men of that day had fringes on the corners of the robes, and they put a blue cord on the fringe at each corner. And that fringe was very important and special. It was considered the most personal part of the wardrobe. Only immediate family would ever consider to touch the fringe of a man's robe. For someone other than a wife, a parent, a son, or a daughter to touch it would have been scandalous. So when Jesus says, "Who just touched the fringe of my robe?" Who just violated everything culturally? Who just did that? And with those words, the crowd would have gone absolutely silent, because they knew that no one should have done that. So not only was this woman about to be disgraced for that, but potentially also revealed for her condition. She would bring dishonor, even more dishonor than was already there, to herself, her family, and her home. So here was a public humiliation in front of none other than Jesus and this massive crowd. Time to run and hide, right? But do you want to see something beautiful in terms of courage and risk-taking? Do you want to see a step of vulnerability in the hope of grace and acceptance, healing and wholeness? Do you want to see relational nakedness, the way that God says we all really need to be if we're ever going to be truly healed? Listen to what happened next. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. She chose to expose herself. She came forward and said, "I touched your robe." But that's not all. She told him why she touched her robe. She could have hidden in the dark, living in and with her shame. But instead, she came out into the light. She risked everything to move toward Jesus instead of away from him. And in that moment, everything was on the line. She was completely vulnerable in that moment. So what happened? How would Jesus respond to a human being who became completely vulnerable in front of him with all of her stuff? This next verse is maybe the most powerful. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." Let that soak in for a moment. What did he call her? Daughter. Who could touch a man's robe? Only an intimate family member. He instantly cleaned up that issue that nobody should be touching his robe by calling her daughter. With that one word, Jesus removed any blame, any shame from her act of faith. She was not only healed, she was also given a new identity. He says, "You're no longer this person who was unclean. You're my beloved child. Not only accepted, but intimately connected to me. You took the risk The risk of being vulnerable in your shame and with your shame, and for that, there's no longer any shame. You're not only healed, you're not only given a new identity, but now you have infinite worth and value and position in my eyes. So what does that story have to do with you? What's that story have to do with me? Simple, really. There's more than one way to bleed. You're bleeding somewhere right now. All of us are. Everyone bleeds with shame. Do you want to hear those words that Jesus spoke for you? Hear that covering of your shame, the healing and experience that. Hear him say, son, daughter, go in peace. Your suffering is over. We all have shame wounds that are bleeding, and nothing that we have done, no passage of time, no procedure, no ritual, no conversation, nothing that we've ever done has healed us. So whether our shame is forced on us by something that someone else has done to us, or it's from something that we did ourselves, we all have wounds that bleed every day. And we feel unclean. So what can we do? We can do exactly what she did. Step out in naked vulnerability and touch the road of Jesus. Lay it all down at his feet. Come to Jesus and tell him everything. You see, what we don't reveal can't be healed. He can't heal what we don't reveal to him. But if we touch his road, ask for forgiveness, ask for healing, and ask for a relationship with him, the answer is always the same. Son, daughter, your suffering is over. For anyone, for everyone, no matter your story, no matter what brings you shame. I want to end today by giving you a taste of that through a powerful share from a young woman. I'm just going to let her tell your story. I'm going to show her video. And she's going to tell you the story, and when it's over, I'll close us in prayer. But listen to a story of risk and a safe God.
Growing up, I just remember my dad just raging. I'd come home and my dad would be really angry, stressed out, and I really took it personal. And I think that I thought to myself that I must be unlovable. High school, noticed that the boys were paying attention to me, and since I wasn't getting any attention from my dad, I gravitated toward any compliment, any pass that was made at me. I met this boy in school that stole my heart. He told me if I slept with him, we'd get married, we'd make a life together, we'd have babies. And I completely took my entire heart and gave it to this boy. And when I found out that he was sleeping with several of my best girlfriends, it was such a shock to me. Left high school, heartbroken, moved out of my parents' home the day after I graduated. I remember waving at my mom when I was 18 and my dad in the back of the car, knowing I'd never come back because I was done. I got out into the beautiful city of Minneapolis, tried to find a way to go to college, but I had to work 3 jobs to have my own place and buy a car. And I found like a new thing inside of me that if I had nice clothes, if I went out to the clubs, I could meet different men that liked me, and maybe I could meet a rich guy that would sweep me off my feet and take care of me like a prince would. And so my girlfriend and I started going out to the nightclubs, and we had a fake ID. And one night we walked in. These men walked up to us at the bar and bought us drinks, Rolex watches, designer clothes. I looked at my girlfriend. These guys have money. My girlfriend starts to like one of the men. I told my girlfriend, get that guy's money. And I think what this really was building inside me was this vendetta, this deep-seated, rooted unforgiveness towards my dad, towards that boy in school, and I just wanted revenge. I was going to prove that I could make it in my life, and money was going to be the answer. My girlfriend takes off with this guy, goes to Hawaii. I'm working my 3 jobs. She calls me up and says, listen, I am on the beach. I'm in a dropped out Corvette, and I'm on my cell phone, and you need to come out here. And even though I didn't have the guts to ask her, what are you doing? I just kind of went with it. It was like an automatic walking into a dark doorway that I knew something wasn't right. But the lure of the possibility of having nice things and finally having money that I never had growing up, finally being someone important, overrode all those feelings of any caution, and it blew it to the wind. And I went to Hawaii that very week, took a vacation from my jobs. And the first night that I was on Waikiki Beach, I actually sold myself with my girlfriend to some Japanese clients, and I became a prostitute. It's kind of like I had this ring that I put on, and I couldn't take it off. No longer could $3.47 an hour cut it. Once I found out that I could make hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, selling myself $500 an hour with no attachment, no relationship, $1,000 an hour. Now it was $2,000 an hour. It gave me this immense power. And if you wanted me for the night, that was $10,000. A few months later, I started dancing. And one day I was on the stage, and this man walks in, puts this couple $100 fan of money at my feet. And I danced just for him. And I let him know that I was actually prostituting my body. I was actually selling myself to make extra ends meet. He looked at me and said, "You are so intelligent. I really like you. In fact, I think I'm falling in love with you." He gave me everything that I needed to hear from my dad. And I decided that I wanted to move to Las Vegas. I got off the plane, and that night I went on a couple calls. I brought home a nice wad of money. My boyfriend was there, and he told me to break myself. "What did you say to me?" He said, "Break yourself. And that means give me all your money, dump your purse out of my lap." And I wasn't having it. And he proceeded to take me out by my hair. He choked me. He threw me on the porch on my knees, and he started kicking me. "This is pimping me. I'm just choking on my own blood. You're gonna work for me." Punching me in my face. I know it is, but what time it is now is you're gonna pay me. My nose broke, my ribs broke. It was like I was looking at the devil. The prince turned dark. And if you try to leave, I'll kill you. That night, it's like I died inside. And the next 5 years of my life, I was with a pimp. Every time he hit me and choked me and raped me or put guns to my head, made me do things I never wanted to do, I just did it because I loved him and because out of fear, because I knew if I didn't, that I would not live to see another day. And even though I got away from him, everything you give, you leave. The money, all behind, because when you leave a pimp, you leave with nothing. I started stacking my money again, but the money wasn't the same. I came down with cancer, and a couple years later, lost all my hair, had chemotherapy, had Hodgkin's lymphoma. I started taking painkillers for my bone pain and my marrow, and I got addicted to painkillers, and that led into cocaine. I was going on calls bald with wigs because I had lost all my hair from chemotherapy. And I had clients calling me a cancer bee, cancer bitch, I'll just say it. I'm staying in these seedy motels, and I remember laying there in my bed looking in the mirror at myself, thinking that God was angry with me. I would get in the shower and I would scrub my body, and I would think, I'll never, ever be clean. I started freebasing cocaine, and one night, I just decided that I was just gonna get higher than I could, than I've ever been before, because I just wanted to erase all of the pain of the cancer, the pain of my uncle, my sister, and my grandpa dying within 3 months of each other, the pain of losing all those years with my family up in the Midwest, the pain of losing all my friends, losing my cars, losing everything I'd ever made. I took the hit of that coke, and I fell back. I went completely blind. It's like the whole room, the light that was on in that room turned dark. And I remember laying there, and I felt like this demonic presence just come over me, that I was completely alone, and I got really, really scared, and I just instinctively knew. I knew that I was at death's door. I was in this dark, dark cave, and I knew it was over. And I saw my family. I saw my funeral. And I was in the coffin. And everybody was crying. They were wiping their faces, and they were saying, she was just a prostitute. And that's when I said, Jesus, I don't know if you knew, but I don't want to die. The ambulance came, and the doctor came up to me, he grabbed my hand, and he said, you are lucky to be alive. You have so much drugs in your system, little lady. You should be dead. God must be with me. And I knew that Jesus heard my prayer. And I laid there, and I had this peace come over me that was nothing like I'd ever felt in my entire life. And I knew God gave me a second chance. I got better, and I started reading my Bible. I recovered and was afraid to go to church. Come on, I'm an ex-prostitute. Do I think if I walk in church, people are gonna look at me and really love me? But I walked in that church and people embraced me. And God just really started doing that inner healing, and the Holy Spirit was just like speaking to me, telling me that I was beautiful, and that I was chosen, and that I was set apart, and that I was sanctified, and I was a holy vessel for Him. I started to stand on Jesus' words, that I'm whole, that I'm healed, that I'm pure, that I'm a virgin in Him. And that gives me peace.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, we ask you for that peace. No matter what our life has been about, Lord, No matter what struggles, what shame we've had, Lord, we lay it at your feet. Help us to be vulnerable. Help us to come to you and lay it all at your feet, God. Because we know what your answer will be. We know that you will say, son, daughter, the struggle's over. The pain is gone. I love you. God, help us to come to you. Help us be that open, that vulnerable, that authentic. In Jesus' name.